In this video, I want to talk about 401k and retirement plan fees and how they can be robbing you of money, and how, if you set things up properly, you can save a lot of money and allow yourself to have even more money in retirement. Welcome back. This is episode 170. In this week's episode, I'd like to talk about investment fees, and in particular retirement plan fees, and how you can know what you're paying and how you can potentially lower these fees to allow yourself to have your money grow even faster. And I mentioned before on a few other videos, but I've written a book called Fiduciary, subtitled What Clients Should Demand from Their Financial Advisors. And it also focuses on how financial advisors can do a better job of helping their clients and advising them. And I have to say, the book was completed about 3 months ago as far as the writing of it, but the editing process has taken longer than I would hoped. And I'm hoping that that's going to be completed and the book will be out sometime in October. And if you'd like to get a free chapter, you can head over to retirewithryan.com/book. You can download a free chapter, and then you'll be notified when the book comes out. And one of the things, the reason I'm bringing this up, that I talk about in the book is investment fees, and how by minimizing investment fees and keeping them low, you can increase your returns over time. And as a fiduciary financial advisor, that is something that I'm always keeping an eye on for my clients, and striving to help them keep in check, especially with the portfolios that I manage for them. However, for clients that I have that are still working and their money is currently tied up in their company retirement plans, we have to manage those investments based on what the company retirement plan offers. And unfortunately, not all company retirement plans are the same. Some plans have relatively low, reasonable fees and good investment options. Other plans that I encounter have high fees and very poor investment options. And the first thing that you really need to do, if you want to know what the investment fees are that you're paying inside of your retirement plan, is you need to download a report called the Participant Fee Disclosure. And it's a report that clearly spells out all the plan fees and what they are. And in general, there are 3 levels of plan fees. The first 2 levels of fees are something you can't do a lot about, but the third level of fees you have the most control over, and it can also allow you to save the most amount of money. So make sure you listen to the end of this episode. So level 1 would be classified as administrative fees, and these are fees to cover the record keeping and services of your plan. For example, to maintain the plan records, to maintain the website that the company has, to pay people that are there to answer questions if you need to call the 1-800 number and ask questions, to send out statements, really to do everything necessary to maintain the plan. And these are assessed one of 2 ways. One, either as a fixed amount per employee, or as an asset-based charge as a percentage of what you have in the plan. Now, fixed in many instances is better because this is usually a flat fee. It could be a monthly charge or a quarterly charge that's per employee. And in some instances, the employer will actually pick up this cost for you. So if that's the case, it's definitely a benefit your employer is giving you. And asset-based fees can sometimes be worse because they can end up being more over time than a fixed fee. So that would be where it's a percentage of your account. So as your account grows, this fee could also grow. And while you're employed at the plan, you don't have a lot of control over this. But what you can do, you can let your employer know that if you're not happy with this fee, and maybe even encourage other employees to know, they can maybe investigate this and have this plan lowered. Now, my firm, Morrissey Wealth Management, we actually advise and manage company 401k plans. And this is something I see all the time when a new company is approaching me and I'm reviewing their plan. I look at all the fees, and sometimes this administrative fee can be pretty high. So that's something we try to help companies do, is lower that fee, lower it for their employees, which is helping their employees money grow faster. The second layer of fee is an individual service fee. And this is a fee that's usually per transaction that covers things like if you take a 401k loan, or you do a rollover of your plan, or if your company offers a brokerage window and you want to take advantage of that, you'd usually pay an additional fee. To take withdrawals, there's a list. Every plan provides of different transactions. And these are usually not a lot of money. these are on the lower end of fees. For example, if you were going to do a rollover, that might cost you $50 to process a rollover. Or if you were going to take a 401k loan, maybe that's a couple $100s. So if you're not doing these often, which usually you're not going to be, these are going to be on the low end of your plan. But again, these are also something you don't have any control over. Whoever the provider is of your 401k plan is the one that determines this plan. And the last layer are investment fees. And these are fees that, again, you have the most control over. And these are fees that come from the investments that you choose inside of your plan. And they're generally the highest level of fees. So these are usually asset-based, as I explained before, meaning that they're a percentage of the assets that you have in the plan. And the percentage would stay the same, but as your account grows, the dollar amount you're actually paying could go up. For example, let's just assume that in your plan, the investments you have an annual fee of 0.5%, and you have $100,000 in your 401k plan. Well, that would be a $500 annual fee that you're paying. But if instead your account grew and now you have a $200,000 401k, your fee would actually go up to $1,000 if we assume that it's the same 0.5%. So you can see there why a fixed fee would be better in that instance, because if you were just paying, let's say, $200 a year to have your account, that $200 a year would stay the same versus the asset-based fee. And these fees can range from a low end of 0.03%, some of them are very, very low, to a high end of 2%. And because it's such a large range, it's really important that you know what you're paying. And when you look over the participant fee disclosure, it's important you look at the expense ratio of the mutual funds or the investments you're choosing. Now, most 401k plans use mutual funds as their investment options, but there are some larger company plans that use pooled accounts that aren't mutual funds, but they act like mutual funds. And within that participant fee disclosure, it would disclose what those fees are. So in this participant fee disclosure, the expense ratio of the fund or the investment is going to be what you want to look at, because that's how you'll know. And I would look through this participant fee disclosure. This is what I do for clients all the time. And I start by looking through to find the investment options with the lowest expense ratio. And many times these are an index-based investment options. Now, I've talked about indexing and index investing before, but just a quick recap. There are many investment indexes out there, and the goal of that index is to track a certain segment of the market. In last week's episode, I talked about the Standard & Poor's or S&P 500. So that's an index of the largest 500 stocks in the United States, and that's an index that's commonly used to track the stock market. You probably also heard of the Dow Jones Industrial Average. That's another index, but that's only 30 stocks. So I would usually recommend following the S&P 500 if you were going to look at stock market performance. So let's just say you could buy the S&P 500 in your 401k. That would generally have a low ongoing investment charge, because as you can imagine, there's not a lot of work involved in maintaining the S&P 500 index. There's a couple of changes on a yearly basis of stocks getting added or removed from that list, but there's not a whole lot of trading or management. So the opposite would be an actively managed fund. And the goal of that fund would be to outperform an index. Let's just say it was the S&P 500. So the fund company or the fund manager, they would pick a number of stocks that make up the S&P 500, and they would hope that over time, over the next year or longer, whatever investments they picked would do better than just owning the S&P 500. So let's just say they picked 30 stocks. If 1 year later those 30 stocks they picked did better than the S&P 500, then they outperformed the index. And this is known as active management. And because of the additional management, additional people, trading, research, right, to maintain this, it costs more. And usually about 1 to 2% more per year. There are some active funds that are less than 1%, but on average about 1 to 2% a year. So if you're in one of these funds, you're paying that additional cost versus an index fund. Additionally, many studies have shown that the majority of active funds and active fund managers over time fail to outperform their comparable index. For example, if you bought a stock fund, let's say it was a large cap stock fund, and over the next 10 years, its average annual return was 6%, but the comparable index of the S&P 500 made 8%, well, you would have lost out on a 2% return per year. So that's why indexing is become so much more popular, because even though you could do better by picking an active fund, the odds are not in your favor, because not only do you have to pick an active fund that outperforms the market, so you have to get lucky there, but you have to hope that that manager actually outperforms the market. So if you invest like that, I would say you're using more of a gambling type approach. And all investing is gambling, but this would be even more gambling, because you're hoping, right, you happen to get lucky and pick the mutual fund that happens to outperform the market over the next 5 or 10 years. And a better bet would be to use an index fund, and this is what I believe in strongly, what I implement for my clients, because we know that if you buy the S&P 500, you're not going to be disappointed with the results as far as compared to the S&P 500. It's possible that there might be some mutual funds that outperform the S&P 500 over the next 10 years, but the hard thing is figuring out what those are going to be, and you have a low probability of doing that. So if you look through your investment list inside of your retirement plan, and if instead you built a portfolio based around an index-based strategy, using both large cap stocks, mid cap stocks, and small caps, so you had large diversification across the U.S. stock market, and then also possibly using some international stock funds as well, index-based, you'd be creating a well-diversified portfolio. And you could also do the same for the bond portion of your portfolio as well. You could use a bond index fund, or you could use also like a stable value fund. These could be good options for you as well. So for more on investing, I would consider going to retirewithryan.com, clicking on podcasts, and then you can click on category, and you can search for investments, and you can look at other podcasts or listen to other podcasts where I talk more about investing. So if you find your investment options are limited in your retirement plan, or you don't have index-based investment options to select from, you want to investigate if your retirement plan offers a brokerage window. Now, I mentioned that earlier, and this is where you move your money over to a brokerage account inside the 401k plan. It's technically outside of the 401k, but this allows you to then open up a much greater selection of both mutual funds, ETFs, possibly individual bonds, and individual stocks. So let's just say your 401k was with Fidelity, for example, and you opened up the brokerage window. You then have access to thousands of mutual funds that you could choose from, and you could then screen those funds out, and you could look for index-based funds or use exchange-traded funds as well. And exchange-traded funds, many of them are index-based strategies that also have a low expense ratio. So this would maybe be a better way, and I see this all the time with companies. Companies generally have a very small list of investment options as their default, and if they offer a brokerage window, that will increase the options for you and allow you a much greater selection. And if you're in a retirement plan that you find has high costs, meaning they don't offer a lot of index-based funds, they're more high-cost, actively managed funds, and they don't have a brokerage window, unfortunately, you're going to have to just make the most of what you have in there. And when you are able to move that money, consider rolling that over to an IRA with a discount broker like Charles Schwab or Fidelity or Vanguard, where they're going to give you a full selection of low-cost investment options. And in order to roll over your plan, I have some past episodes on this, but usually you have to have left the company, have retired or been laid off, and also be over the age of 59 and a half. You can possibly, some plans allow you to roll over your money while you're still in the plan and still keep contributing, but roll it over so that you can have better investment options. And I see this all the time with clients that we help them with this. So I would suggest, if you haven't done so, or maybe you've probably never done so, you've never heard of a participant fee disclosure before, take the next steps and get that document. A lot of times, if you log into your 401k, you can find that under documents or under disclosure. Or if you can't, you can reach out to your 401k provider and they can provide this. And follow those steps that I laid out in reviewing what you have and trying to build a better portfolio so that you can put your money in the best position to grow going forward by minimizing your fees. And don't forget to head over to retirewithryan.com/book to download a free chapter of my book where I discuss this even more. And hopefully in the next couple of weeks, but at least by the end of October, my book is out and you can read the full book. So have a great week. I look forward to talking to you next Wednesday, and I appreciate your listenership. Take care.